The floodlights over the Kestrel station ration docks did not illuminate so much as they interrogated. They cut through the thick, oily fog of the undercity with a harsh sodium glare that turned human skin the color of old bruises. It was 0400 hours, the designated feeding window for Sector 7, and the line of shuffling, shivering bodies stretched back into the rusted throat of the ventilation tunnels. Jack stood near the front, shifting his weight from one aching foot to the other. The cold here was not a temperature. It was a physical weight, a heavy blanket of recycled nitrogen and damp metal that settled into the marrow and refused to leave. He pulled his collar up, burying his nose in the fraying synthetic wool of his jacket. It smelled of ozone and other people's despair. He checked his wrist unit. The screen was cracked, a spiderweb of fractures over the glowing green digits. But it told him he had 3 minutes before the distribution cycle ended. 3 minutes to convince the machine that he existed. The line moved. A woman in front of him, her face gaunt and gray, pressed her palm against the bio-glass of the kiosk. The scanner hummed, a low, judgmental vibration that resonated in the deck plating. Identity confirmed. The machine's synthetic voice droned, calorie allocation granted. A slot opened with a pneumatic hiss. A single gray brick of nutrient paste slid out. She grabbed it with trembling hands, clutching it to her chest like a newborn child, and hurried away into the shadows without looking back. Jack stepped up. He wiped his palm on his trousers, trying to clear the grease and sweat. He was a salvage runner, a bottom feeder in the station's ecosystem, and grime was his professional uniform. He pressed his hand against the cold glass. The scanner beamed a laser grid across his skin, reading the ridges of his fingerprints and the heat signature of his blood. Jax held his breath. He had spent the last 2 days stripping copper wiring from a derelict hull in the gravity well, a job that had paid him in scrap credits that the official exchange refused to honor. He had not eaten a solid meal in 48 hours. His stomach was a hollowed-out cavern echoing with a dull, cramping ache. Processing, the machine said. Its voice was smooth, female, and utterly indifferent. Jax tapped his fingers against his thigh. Come on. Just give me the paste. I will take the flavorless gray slab. I will take the algae block. Just give me something. Non-essential personnel detected. The machine announced. Jax froze. He leaned in, staring at the optical sensor. Check it again, he said, his voice rough from disuse. I am registered. Jax Vane. Salvage license 49 Alpha. Check it again. Calorie output exceeds labor contribution. The machine replied, deficit of 300 credits recorded. Ration denied. Denied. The word hung in the freezing air like a guillotine blade. Jax slammed his fist against the metal casing of the kiosk. The impact rattled his teeth, but the machine did not care. It simply cycled its lights, waiting for the next starving soul behind him. Hey, move it, someone grumbled from the line. Jax turned, his eyes narrowing. He wanted to fight. He wanted to scream that the algorithm was rigged, that the station lords in the upper spires were starving them by decimal points to save fuel. But he saw the desperate look in the man's eyes, a mirror of his own, and the anger drained out of him, leaving only the cold. He stepped out of line. He walked away from the docks, his boots crunching on the frost that coated the deck. The hunger was sharper now, a serrated knife twisting in his gut. He navigated the labyrinth of shipping containers and hydraulic lifts, looking for an angle, a loose crate, anything he could trade or steal. That was when he saw it. A courier drone, sleek and black, drifted silently down from the upper gantries. It was not one of the clunky, noisy municipal lifters. This was high-end tech, silent propulsion, military-grade stealth coating. It hovered over a secluded drop point near a decommissioned waste chute, a blind spot in the station's surveillance grid. Jax crouched behind a stack of empty fuel drums, He watched as the drone extended a manipulator arm and deposited a single capsule onto the metal grating. The capsule was small, the size of a water canister, but it was sealed with a heavy magnetic lock. On its side, printed in stark white against the matte black casing, was a crest Jax had never seen before. A circle representing a moon, split down the center by 3 jagged vertical claw marks. The drone retracted its arm and shot back up into the gloom, disappearing into the fog. Jax waited. He counted to 10, listening for the heavy tread of a collection agent or the whine of a security skiff. Silence. He should walk away. That crest looked dangerous. Black market drops were usually protected by things worse than hunger. If he touched it, he was dead. If he did not touch it, he was starving. The math was simple. Hunger killed you slowly. A bullet killed you fast. Fast seemed preferable. Jax moved. He darted across the open space, his movements low and fluid, a rat scuttling between shadows. He snatched the capsule. It was heavier than it looked, cold and dense. Immediately, the ambient noise of the station changed. The distant rhythmic thrum of the ventilation fan skipped a beat. A siren, far off in the security sector, shifted its pitch from a low wail to a sharp, urgent staccato. It felt as if the station itself had drawn a sharp breath. Jax did not wait to see what was coming. He shoved the capsule into his battered pack and sprinted. He knew these decks better than the architects who designed them. He ducked into a maintenance corridor, sliding down a grease-slicked ladder into the sublevels. He ran through tunnels that smelled of sewage and burnt plastic, dodging steam vents and leaping over gaps in the floor plating where the station's gravity plating was failing. He did not stop until he was 3 sectors away. Deep in the bowels of the salvage district, he wedged himself into a narrow crawl space behind a heat exchanger, his chest heaving, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He listened. No footsteps, no drones, just the dripping of condensation and the hum of the machinery. Jax pulled the capsule from his pack. His hands were shaking, partly from adrenaline, partly from low blood sugar. He examined the lock. It was a biometric seal, designed for a specific genetic sequence. But Jax was a salvage runner. Breaking locks was half the job. He pulled a multi-tool from his belt, flipping out a laser etcher and a magnetic bypass probe. He jammed the probe into the seam of the canister and adjusted the frequency. The lock sizzled, protesting the intrusion. Jax gritted his teeth and twisted the probe. With a sharp crack, the seal gave way. The lid popped open with a hiss of pressurized gas. Jax peered inside, expecting high-grade protein bars or maybe medical stimulants. Instead, he found a single wafer-thin strip of shimmering material and a jagged shard of metal. He frowned. He picked up the strip. It was Nutrifilm, the hyper-condensed rations used by deep space pilots. 1 strip was equal to 3 days of heavy caloric intake. He didn't hesitate. He tore a corner off and shoved it into his mouth. The flavor was intense, copper and honey, and the energy hit his bloodstream almost instantly. The trembling in his hands slowed. His vision sharpened. He looked at the other object. The shard. It looked like a piece of debris, a jagged fragment of gray alloy about the size of his palm. But as he held it, it began to hum. It was a sound felt in the teeth rather than heard by the ears. Then, the air above the shard shimmered. A holographic projection unfolded from the metal, expanding into the cramped space of the maintenance shaft. It was a map, but not a map of the station he knew. It showed layers of infrastructure that were not on any public schematic, hidden corridors, sealed vaults, and ventilation shafts that cut through the secure sectors like arteries. Jax blinked, surprised by the sudden light. The moment his eyelids closed, the map vanished. He opened his eyes. The shard was just a piece of cold metal again. He frowned. He stared at it, focusing his gaze. The hum returned. The light bloomed again, projecting the map. He blinked. It cut out. "It is reading my eyes," Jax whispered to the empty tunnel. "It is active optics." He shoved the shard back into the capsule and sealed it as best he could. This was not just a ration drop. He had intercepted something else, something valuable, something dangerous. He needed to get back to his bunk. He needed to stash this sleep for 6 hours, and then find a fence who wouldn't ask questions. Jax crawled out of the maintenance shaft and made his way through the shadows toward the salvage hostel. The hostel was a converted cargo container yard, stacked 5 high and welded together into a towering slum of corrugated steel. Jax lived in Unit 4-2, a box near the bottom of the stack that vibrated every time a heavy freighter docked at the port. He keyed the manual lock on his door. The electronic one had shorted out months ago and slipped inside. The room was a testament to his existence on the fringe. It was small, barely wide enough for him to spread his arms. A single bioluminescent lamp flickered on the wall, casting a sickly green light over the space. There was a pile of scavenged tech in the corner, a bucket for washing, and in the center of the floor his bedroll. It was not much, just a thermal mat and a sleeping bag patched with duct tape and hope. But it was his. It was the only place in the entire station where he could close his eyes and not worry about someone picking his pockets or checking his calorie credit. Jax tossed his pack into the corner and sat down heavily on the bedroll. He took the capsule out again, turning it over in his hands. The claw-marked moon stared back at him. He should not have taken it. He knew that now. The siren change, the specialized drone, the biometric lock. This was heavy politics. This was the kind of thing that got people erased. "Tomorrow," he said aloud. "Tomorrow I trade it for credits and a ticket to the outer rim." He lay back, the Nutrifilm working its magic on his exhausted body. He closed his eyes, listening to the familiar groans of the station. Then, the lights flickered, not a normal power surge. This was a hard cut, followed by a slow, agonizing return to full brightness. The air pressure in the room dropped, popping his ears. Click. Jax sat up instantly. The manual latch on his door, the heavy steel bolt he had just engaged, slid back. It moved smoothly, silently, as if ghost hands were operating it. The door swung open. Jack scrambled backward, his hand going for the pry bar he kept under his pillow. A figure stood in the doorway. She was tall, taller than him, with a lean, corded musculature that spoke of high-gravity conditioning. She wore a mishmash of tactical gear, a torn flight suit, armored shin guards, and a dark cloak that looked like it had been ripped from a blast curtain. But it was her face that froze Jax's hand on the weapon. She was alien, but in a way that suggested a laboratory rather than a planet. Her skin was pale and luminous, glowing faintly under the grime of the Undercity. Her jawline was sharp, sweeping back into ears that were subtly, elegantly pointed, and her eyes were liquid silver, devoid of pupils, reflecting the green light of his lamp like twin moons. She stepped into the room. She did not walk. She stalked. Every movement was fluid, precise, and utterly silent. Jax gripped the pry bar, trying to summon the bravado that usually saved his skin. "Wrong room, honey," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "The luxury suites are upstairs." She did not blink. She tilted her head to the side, a bird-like, inquisitive motion. She inhaled deeply, her nostrils flaring. "Synthetic protein. 48 hours ago," she said. Her voice was a rasp, low and vibrating like gravel sliding down a metal chute. Recycled water, fierce sweat, and she paused, stepping closer. Honey, copper, Nutrifilm. She looked at his pack in the corner. Jax tightened his grip on the bar. Look, I do not know who you are, but you need to back up. She moved before he could blink. 1 second she was by the door, the next she was on top of him. She knocked the pry bar from his hand with a casual backhand swipe and pinned him to the floor. Her hands were incredibly strong, locking his wrists above his head. She straddled him, her weight heavy and solid. Her face was inches from his. He could see the faint hexagonal pattern in her irises. He could see the way her canines were slightly too long, slightly too serrated to be human. She was not just a woman. She was a weapon. She leaned down, sniffing his neck. Her breath was hot against his skin. Took my ration, she whispered. The anger in her voice was not the cold, professional threat of a debt collector. It was sharp, jagged, and possessive. It sounded like heartbreak. Now, she hissed, baring those engineered teeth. I claim your bedroll. Jax blinked, his mind reeling. What? My bedroll? He choked out. You want my sleeping bag? Take it. Just get off me. She did not move. She stared down at him, her silver eyes narrowing. You offer it? She asked. You submit the territory? I am offering you the piece of foam you are currently kneeling on. Jax shouted. Take it! It is yours. Binding? She said. The word had the weight of a stone dropping into a well. She sat back slightly, sitting on his hips, but she did not release his wrists. She looked around the room, assessing the 4 metal walls, the flickering lamp, the pile of scrap. Then she looked back at him. You are the keeper? She asked. I am the guy who lives here, Jax yelled. Or I was until 5 seconds ago. Look, take the ration back. It is in the pack. I only ate a little bit of the film. She ignored the offer. She was studying his face with an intensity that made his skin crawl. She looked at his mouth, his eyes, the pulse hammering in his throat. You stole what belongs to me, she said softly. Therefore you owe debt. The bedroll is claimed. The territory is shared. She released his wrists, but she did not get off him. She placed her hands on his chest, her fingers splayed. Her nails were thick, dark, and curved like talons. Jax lay there, paralyzed by a cocktail of terror and utter confusion. She was treating his sleeping mat like it was a feudal estate she had just conquered. Get off me, Jax said, trying to keep his voice steady. She paused. She looked at his hands, which were raised in a gesture of surrender, then at his face. She seemed to be processing the request, running it through some internal filter. She eased back. She moved with a strange, jerky grace, sliding off him and crouching on the floor beside the bedroll. She did not look submissive. She looked like a predator waiting for the prey to run. Jack scrambled backward until his back hit the cold metal wall. He rubbed his wrists. Who are you? He asked. What are you? She did not answer. She was looking at her own wrists. Jax followed her gaze. There were marks there, faint, circular scars where shackles had dug in, and higher up, at the base of her neck. A small metallic node was embedded in her skin, blinking with a slow, red rhythm. Tracking bruises, slave collar marks. She is running, Jax realized. She is not a collector. She is the escapee before he could speak. A low hum vibrated through the floor. It was the sound of hover turbines. Close, very close. Jax scrambled to his knees and looked out the small, grime-encrusted porthole window. Outside, in the alleyway, the blue sweep lights of station drones were cutting through the fog. Civic security, Jax whispered. The girl hissed. It was a sound no human throat should be able to make, a reptilian warning. She grabbed Jax's sleeve. Hide! she commanded. "There is nowhere to hide. It is one room." She did not argue. She yanked him down. She pulled him onto the floor, shoving him into the narrow gap between the bedroll and the wall. And then she curled her body around his. She pressed him into the shadows, her body acting as a shield. She was heavy, warm, and smelled of ozone and something muskier, something like wet fur and high-voltage electricity. "Stay," she whispered into his ear. Jax froze. He was pressed against the cold metal of the wall, and she was pressed against him. Her heart was beating against his back. It was slow, powerful, and rhythmic. Thump, 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 thump. He could feel the heat radiating from her. It was uncomfortable. It was terrifying. And yet, his body reacted. His pulse spiked. He felt a sudden, irrational awareness of every inch of contact between them. He hated it. He wanted to push her away. He wanted to sink into the floor. She shifted, her chin resting on his shoulder. She was watching the door, her silver eyes wide and unblinking. She was not looking at the door like a person scared of the police. She was looking at it like a wolf watching a rabbit hole. "They hunt," she breathed. "Who?" Jax asked, his voice barely audible. "The handlers," she said. "The ones with the codes." Jax felt a warmth in his pocket. The capsule, the shard inside, was heating up. He shifted his hand, trying to pull the capsule out without disturbing her. She snapped her head around, her nose twitching. She looked at his pocket. "The key," she said. "You have the key." "It is a map," Jax whispered. "It is a key," she insisted. "To the cage." Outside, the drone noise grew louder. A beam of blue light swept through the porthole, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The girl tensed, her muscles turning to stone against Jax's back. Then, the world tilted. It was not a figure of speech. The artificial gravity in the sector stuttered. For a heartbeat, up became a suggestion rather than a law. The pile of scrap in the corner floated into the air. Jax's stomach lurched into his throat. The girl's hair floated around her face like a silver halo. Then, with a deafening crash, gravity returned. The scrap pile slammed back down. "Anomaly," Jax gasped. "The grav generators are failing." "Opportunity," the girl corrected. She grabbed his wrist. Her grip was like a vice. "Run," she said. She did not wait for his agreement. She hauled him up and kicked the door open. They burst out into the corridor just as a security drone rounded the corner. "Halt," the drone chirped, its stun cannon cycling up. The girl did not halt. She launched herself at the machine. She moved with that impossible engineered speed, leaping off the wall and slamming her shoulder into the drone's chassis. Metal crunched. The drone spun wildly, its stabilizers failing. She landed in a crouch, sparks raining down around her. She looked back at Jax, extending her hand. "Bedroll, mate," she called out. "Come." Jax looked at the sparking drone, then at the girl. He looked at the ration capsule in his hand. He had gone out for food. He was coming home with a fugitive alien super soldier and a conspiracy in his pocket. He grabbed her hand. They ran. They sprinted through the labyrinth of the hostel, taking stairs 3 at a time. The gravity stuttered again, making their steps light and bouncy, like running on the moon. They burst out of the rear exit and into the chaotic sprawl of the night market. Here, the neon signs were blinding, pink, blue, and toxic green. The air smelled of frying synth meat and engine grease. Crowds of people parted as the two of them barreled through, the girl leading the way, her silver eyes scanning every face, every shadow. She did not let go of his wrist. She held onto him as if he were the only solid thing in a dissolving world. Jax looked at her hand, clamped around his arm. He looked at the tracking node on her neck. He realized then that the ration he had stolen was not food. It was not just a map. It was the leash. And somehow, by opening it, he had picked up the other end. "Where are we going?" Jax shouted over the noise of the market. "Away from the scent of the cage," she yelled back, pulling him deeper into the neon chaos. Jax tightened his grip on the capsule in his pocket. He was not just a salvage runner anymore. He was a handler, and he had no idea what he had just unleashed. The undercity bazaar of Kestrel Station was a hemorrhage of light and noise, a sprawling subterranean infection of commerce that clung to the structural ribs of the colony. Here, the air was thick enough to chew, tasting of recycled sweat, ozone, and the sickly sweet vapor of synthetic spices burning in copper braziers. Neon signs in pink, acid green, and warning amber flickered overhead, advertising everything from kidney filtration upgrades to black market water. Jack's vein moved through the crowd with the practiced slide of a man who knew how to disappear. But it was impossible to be invisible with her involved. She moved like a collision waiting to happen. She was not walking. She was prowling. Her silver eyes darted from face to face, assessing threats, calculating trajectories, and dissecting the intentions of every grimy salvage hauler who looked at them too long. "Back to wall," she murmured, her voice a low vibration that Jax felt in his shoulder blade, heartbeat in reach. She was pressed against his side, her hand gripping the back of his jacket with enough force to bruise the leather. "You do not have to stand on top of me," Jax hissed, trying to steer them around a stall selling roasted lizards on sticks. "People are staring. Let them stare," she replied, her gaze tracking a security drone that buzzed lazily overhead. "If they look, they are not hunting. Hunters do not let you see them." She pulled him sharply to the left, avoiding a puddle of glowing hydraulic fluid. "Handler, stay close." Jack stopped, turning to face her in the shadow of a hanging tarp. "Stop calling me that," he said. "I am not your handler. I am a guy who stole a snack and got a wolf girl as a prize. My name is Jax. Can you say that?" "Jax." She stared at him, her head tilting with that unnerving avian curiosity. "Jax." She tested the word. It sounded sharp in her mouth, like a weapon. "Jax." It is a short sound, efficient. She looked at the crowd again, her nostrils flaring. "We need resources. Handler, Jax. Your metabolic rate is dropping. I can smell the glucose deficit in your blood." "I am fine," Jax lied, his stomach immediately betraying him with a loud growl. She did not smile. She looked at a nearby vending machine, a battered metal obelisk covered in graffiti. "Nourishment," she declared. She marched over to the machine. Jax hurried after her, terrified she was about to dismantle it. The machine was ancient. Its interface screen was cracked, and the selection coil for the protein bars was stuck halfway. Jax watched as she stared at the glass, her reflection ghosting over the rows of colorful wrappers. "Dispense," she commanded. The machine hummed an apology in static. "Insert credit." She narrowed her eyes. A low growl started deep in her chest, a sound that made the hair on Jax's arms stand up. She leaned in, her lips peeling back to reveal the flash of lengthened canines. "I said dispense," she whispered, placing a hand on the glass. The metal casing groaned under her fingers. Jax lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "Hey, easy, it is a machine. It does not have feelings. You cannot intimidate a coil mechanism." She looked at him, confused. "It refuses the exchange," she said. "It is hoarding. It is broken," Jax said. "And we do not have credits." She looked back at the machine, then at Jax. "If it hoards while the pack starves, it is an enemy." She raised a fist, ready to punch through the polycarbonate. "No!" Jax dragged her away, earning a few curious glances from a group of scavengers. We are trying to be low profile, remember? Punching a vending machine is high profile. She allowed herself to be pulled back into the stream of the crowd, but she kept glancing back at the machine with lingering animosity. I do not understand your territory rules, she muttered. The metal box has food. You have hunger. The barrier is thin. Why do we respect the barrier? Because that is how civilization works, Jack said, though the word felt hollow in a place where people were selling their own teeth for water. He needed to get them off station. The ration capsule in his pocket felt like it was burning a hole through his trousers. He needed a broker. He needed a fence who could look at a piece of high-grade, stolen military tech and see a ticket out, not a death sentence. He knew a guy. Everyone knew a guy, but Jax knew old man Riss. Riss operated out of a converted shipping container stacked precariously near the thermal vents. His shop was a cluttered shrine to obsolete technology, screens, wires, servo skulls, and circuit boards. Jax pushed through the heavy plastic strips that served as a door. The shop smelled of soldering iron and stale tea. Riss was behind the counter, a hunchbacked man with a cybernetic eye that whirred as it focused. Jax, Riss croaked, his voice like grinding gears. You owe me 40 credits for that comm unit. I have something better, Jax said, stepping up to the counter. He motioned for the girl to stay by the door. She did not like it. She paced the small threshold, her eyes scanning the ceiling, the corners, the shadows under the desk. Jax placed the shard on the counter. What is this? Riss asked, picking it up with grease-stained fingers. Salvage, Jax said. High-end. I think it is a navigation key. Riss adjusted his cybernetic eye, zooming in on the metallic surface. He pulled a scanner wand from his belt and ran it over the shard. The shard hummed. The map flickered into existence for a split second, a ghostly blue web of tunnels before vanishing. Riss dropped the wand. He scrambled back, knocking over a stack of data slates. Where did you get this? He whispered, his real eye wide with terror. Found it, Jax said, leaning in. What is it, Riss? Is it worth a ticket? Worth a ticket? Riss laughed, a high, hysterical sound. It is a death warrant. That is Moon sovereign property. That is a Ration governance override key. The girl at the door stopped pacing. She snapped her head toward them. Riss's hands were shaking. He reached under the counter. I cannot touch this, Jax. I cannot know you have this. Riss, wait, Jax said, reaching out. Riss pressed a button. A silent alarm light on the wall turned from green to red. He signaled. The girl said. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly so. Jax grabbed the shard and shoved it back into his pocket. We are leaving. Not fast enough, Riz shouted, pulling a scattergun from beneath the desk. Get out, before the wardens burn this whole sector. Jax did not argue. He grabbed the girl's arm and they bolted out of the shop. They made it 10 feet before the response came. 2 enforcement drones dropped from the ceiling vents, their sirens screaming. A squad of civic security officers in riot gear rounded the corner, their stun batons crackling with blue electricity. Halt! A voice boomed from a speaker. Drop to your knees. The girl looked at Jax. Fight or flight? Handler? Flight, Jax yelled. Definitely flight. He scrambled up a pile of crates, aiming for the rusted catwalks overhead. The girl did not scramble. She moved like liquid tension released. She leaped, clearing the 6-foot stack of crates in a single bound. A stun bolt sizzled past Jax's ear, scorching the air. Move, the girl shouted. She grabbed the back of his belt and physically threw him, onto the catwalk. Jax landed hard. The wind knocked out of him, but he scrambled up. She was right behind him. She landed on the railing, balancing on the balls of her feet like a gargoyle. Below them, the security officers opened fire. She hissed, her face contorting. For a second, her human disguise wavered, her jaw extended, her ears swept back, and her hands shifted, the fingers lengthened, the nails becoming black, obsidian claws. She launched herself off the railing, not away from the guards, but toward the wall above them. She dug those claws into the steel bulkhead, hanging vertically for a second, defying gravity. "Target locked," a guard shouted. She pushed off the wall, twisting in midair. She landed in the center of the squad, a blur of motion. Jack screamed, "No killing!" He watched, terrified, expecting a massacre. She struck, but she did not slash. She used the flat of her palm to shatter a guard's visor. She swept another's legs out with her tail, a long, ridge-spined appendage that had burst from the back of her flight suit. She moved with surgical precision, disarming, tripping, stunning. She was a whirlwind of non-lethal violence. She tossed a 200-pound man into a pile of garbage bags as if he were made of straw. Then she looked up at Jax. "Up!" she commanded. She leaped again, catching the catwalk railing and swinging herself up beside him. Her claws retracted instantly, sliding back under her skin with a sickening wet sound. Her tail vanished beneath her cloak. "Run!" she said, breathless but exhilaratingly alive. They ran across the gantries, leaping over steam vents and dodging the grasping arms of maintenance cranes. They lost the drones in the twisting maze of the ventilation sector, sliding down a waste chute that deposited them in the silent, dusty district of the old hull. Here, the station was built around the skeletal remains of the original colony ship. It was quiet, dark, and forgotten by the patrols. They ducked into a structure that looked like a chapel, built inside the hollowed-out ribcage of an ancient engine thruster. The air was cold and still. Stained glass made from recycled bottle bottoms cast a kaleidoscope of colors on the floor. Jax collapsed against a pew, gasping for air. His lungs burned. The girl stood in the center of the aisle. She was not panting. She was listening. "Clear," she said softly. "No pursuit." Jax looked at her. She was wiping dust from her face. She looked almost normal again, save for the silver eyes and the predatory grace. "You threw those guys around like rag dolls." Jax wheezed. "They were in the way," she said simply. "You did not hurt them. I mean, you hurt them, but you did not open them." She looked at her hands. "The directive is to neutralize," she said. "Unnecessary damage is inefficient." And she paused, her brow furrowing. "You shouted no killing." Jax stared at her. "You listened to me? You are the handler," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. Jax pulled the shard from his pocket. It was humming again, louder this time. The proximity to the old ship tech seemed to be waking it up. He set it on the floor. The map projected instantly, filling the dark chapel with blue light. But this time, it was not just tunnels. It was a schematic of the entire station's biological grid. Red lines pulsed through the sectors, tracing air, water, and food, and floating in the center of the projection was a profile, a spinning DNA helix and a serial number. LIRVX, bond candidate. Below it, a status, asset deployed. Target, senatorial imprinting. The girl stared at the words. She flinched, stepping back as if the light had burned her. "That is me," she whispered. "Lear. They call me Lear." Jax looked at the projection, then at her. "Bond candidate?" he asked. "What does that mean?" She hugged herself, her fingers digging into her arms. "It means I am not a person," she said, her voice trembling. "I am a product. The Warden brides. We are grown in the lab's down sector, designed to be perfect." "Perfect what? Soldiers? Partners?" She spat the word out. "Enforcers who cannot betray you because our biology forbids it. We are bred to imprint, to bond with a specific genetic marker. Once the bond is set, we cannot lie to the handler. We cannot hurt the handler. We smell their lies. We hunt their enemies, and we guard their sleep. She looked at Jax with a mixture of horror and defiance. They sell us to the high-born, to the politicians and the gang lords, a bodyguard who doubles as a wife, a slave who thinks she is in love. Jax felt a cold pit open in his stomach. Slavery, he muttered. That is just slavery with extra science. Design, she corrected automatically, then flinched again. That is what the trainers said. It is grand design. It is sick, Jax said. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but she jerked away. Do not, she warned. The bond. The ration you opened. It was a trigger. It confuses my instincts. My head knows you are just a salvage runner. But my blood thinks you are him. The one I was made for. Who? She pointed to the map. The projection shifted, showing a list of names. High-level clearance. I do not know, she said. But the shard, it guides. Jax looked at the map. It showed a hidden route to the station's atmospheric processors. And it showed something else, a name. Ration Governance Override. This is not just about you, Jax said, realizing the scale of it. This shard controls the food. We need to rest, she said abruptly. Her adrenaline was crashing. She looked small suddenly, standing in the colored light of the stained glass. They found a maintenance vault behind the altar. It was a small steel cube, barely big enough for two, but it was warm and had a lockable door. Jax spread his bedroll out on the floor. It was the only soft thing in the room. He sat down, leaning his back against the wall. You can have the bedroll, he said. I will sleep on the floor. She stood by the door, watching him. She looked exhausted. The fight, the chase, the revelation. It was wearing her down. No, she said. What? I cannot sleep alone, she said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Why? Because that is when they used to come, she said, in the labs. When we slept, they would whisper the codes. They would adjust the programming. If I sleep alone, I might wake up different. I need. She trailed off, looking at the bedroll. I need the anchor. Jax looked at the narrow strip of foam. He looked at her, standing there shivering in her armor. He patted the space beside him. Okay, he said. Come here. She hesitated. She looked at the space like it was a trap. I claim it? She asked, her voice cracking. No, Jax said firmly. You do not claim it, and I do not order you to take it. He looked her in the eye. It is just a spot. Lair, you can share the warmth, but only if you ask. She stared at him. The concept seemed alien to her. Asking, not taking, not being ordered, choosing. May I? She asked. The words were small, furious at their own vulnerability. May I share the warmth? Yes, Jax said. She moved slowly. She knelt on the mat and lay down, putting her back to his back. She was stiff at first, coiled tight. Jax lay down too, facing the wall. He could feel the heat of her through his jacket. He could feel the slow, heavy thrum of her heart. Slowly, imperceptibly. She relaxed. She shifted backward, closing the gap until her spine was pressed against his. It was a solid, grounding weight. Then, he felt something else, a movement at his feet, her tail. It had emerged again, soft this time, stripped of its combat ridges. It curled around his ankle, tightening slightly. It was not a shackle, it was a holding on. Jax closed his eyes. Good night, Lear, he whispered. Safe, she murmured into the dark. Jax woke to a flickering light. He sat up, groggy. Lear was already awake, crouched by the door, peeking through a crack in the metal. The air in the vault felt charged, static electricity prickling Jax's skin. "Look," she said. Jax crawled over and looked through the crack. The corridor outside was bathed in a strange, pulsating rhythm. The emergency lights, usually a steady amber, were flickering in a pattern. Long pulse, short pulse, long pulse. It looked like breathing. It looked like moonlight. "They are signaling," Lear said. "The network is compromised." They gathered their gear and slipped out of the chapel. The station felt different today, tenser. They made their way to a viewing platform overlooking the lower promenade. Below, a crowd had gathered. Civic security officers were dragging a family out of a food line. The parents were screaming. The children were crying. "Non-compliant consumption," an officer bellowed, his voice amplified. "Ration fraud detected." He raised a baton and struck the father. The man went down, blood spraying on the deck. Lear let out a low snarl. She moved to jump over the railing. Jax grabbed her belt. "No!" he hissed. "They are hurting them!" She snarled, her eyes flashing silver. "I can stop them. I can tear them apart." "And then what?" Jax said, spinning her around to face him. "Then they call in the heavy mechs. Then they lock down the sector. Then those kids get caught in the crossfire." She trembled, her muscles fighting against his grip. "We do not hunt just to kill," Jax said, channeling every ounce of earnestness he had. "We hunt to win. You go down there now. You lose. You save one family and doom the rest." She breathed heavily, staring at the violence below. Her predatory instinct screamed for blood, but her eyes, her intelligent, terrified eyes, searched his face. "Then how do we win?" she asked. "We find out why they are doing this," Jax said. "We use the key. They needed help. They needed someone who spoke the language of the shard." Jax led them to the sub-basement of the reactor core, to a hidden workshop behind a false wall of piping. Unit 734. But everyone called him Kip. Kip was a dissident tech, a scrawny man with blue hair and fingers that ended in sensory jacks. He was currently welding a toaster to a drone chassis. "Jax!" Kip yelled, not looking up. "You owe me for that logic board." "I brought you a puzzle?" "Kip," Jax said. Kip spun around in his chair. He saw Lear. He froze. Then he whistled. Is that a Gen 3 warden?" Kip asked, his eyes wide. "Where did you get a Gen 3? Those things are myth." "I am standing right here," Lear growled. "And she is feisty." Kip grinned. He rolled his chair over. "What do you have?" Jax handed him the shard. Kip plugged it into his console. Screens lit up. Code cascaded down the monitors like green rain. Kip's smile vanished. "Oh," he whispered. "Oh, boy. This is not good." "What is it?" Jax asked. "It is a governance override," Kip said, typing furiously. "But look at the timestamps." He pointed to a graph. It showed food production levels versus distribution. "Production is flat," Kip said. "See? The hydroponics are working fine. The algae tanks are full. There is no shortage." "Then why is everyone starving?" Lear asked. "Because of this?" Kip pointed to a red line. "Artificial choke points. The system is programmed to withhold 40% of the calories. It is dumping the excess into space." "What?" Jax felt the blood drain from his face. "They are throwing food away?" "To create panic," Kip said. "Look at the logs. Phase 1, scarcity. Phase 2, unrest. Phase 3, emergency powers." "It is a coup," Jax realized. "The famine isn't a disaster, it is a strategy." "And the wardens?" Lear asked softly. Kip pulled up another file. "Phase 4, deployment of asset class warden. They starve the people until they riot," Kip explained. "Then they declare martial law. Then they release the monsters. Sorry, no offense. The specialized enforcers to restore order. The senator who fixes the famine becomes the hero. The wardens become the police. Lear stared at the screen. I was not made to protect, she whispered. I was made to oppress. She looked at her hands. I am the whip. No, Jax said firmly. You are the whistleblower. You are the proof. Suddenly, the motion sensor on Kip's desk shrieked. Proximity alert, Kip yelled. The door to the workshop exploded inward. Smoke filled the room. Jax was thrown back against the workbench. Through the haze, figures emerged. They were tall. They were beautiful. They wore sleek, white armor that glowed with soft internal light. They moved with the same liquid grace as Lear, but their movements were synchronized, robotic. 3 of them. Wardens. Lear stood up, baring her fangs. She looked feral, messy, and real compared to their polished perfection. One of the white-armored figures stepped forward. She removed her helmet. Her face was identical to Lear's, but her eyes were gold, not silver. Asset Lear VX, the Golden Warden said. Her voice was smooth like poured cream. You are malfunctioning. I am awake, Lear snarled. The Golden Warden smiled. It was a terrifying, pitying smile. You are confused. The handler requires your return. She looked at Jax. And you, the scavenger. The warden held out a hand. Give us the asset. Give us the key. We will authorize a lifetime calorie credit. Tier 1 food, real meat, fresh fruit. You will never be hungry again. Jax looked at the warden. He looked at the offer of survival. Then he looked at Lear. She was trembling, ready to fight. But she looked back at him. She did not plead. She did not beg. She just watched him, waiting to see if he was a handler or a partner. Jax stood up, wiping blood from his lip. Real meat? Jax asked. Steak. The warden promised. Jax looked at Lear. She hates the term asset, Jax said. He grabbed a heavy wrench from the workbench. And frankly, I prefer the gray paste. It has more character. The warden's smile vanished. Disappointing, she said. She signaled her pack. Take them! Lear roared, a sound of pure defiance, and launched herself at her sister. Jax tightened his grip on the heavy wrench, the metal cold and greasy against his sweating palm. Across the smoky workshop, the Golden Warden stood like a statue carved from starlight and hubris. Her hand extended in an offer that sounded like salvation but smelled like a cage. Real meat, Jax repeated, his voice steady despite the fact that his knees felt like water. You are offering me a stake to sell out the only person on this station who has not tried to rob me or arrest me in the last 24 hours. The Golden Warden tilted her head, a mirror image of Lear's curiosity but devoid of her warmth. It is a logical exchange, she said smoothly. 1 life for comfort, 1 asset for stability. Jax looked at Lear. She was crouched, muscles coiled, a low vibration building in her chest that rattled the tools on the workbench. She was waiting for him. Not for his permission, he realized, but for his allegiance. I think I will pass, Jax said, feigning a casual shrug. I am trying to cut back on red meat. It is bad for the arteries. The warden's golden eyes narrowed. Illogical. She flicked her wrist. The 2 wardens behind her moved, drawing shock batons that crackled with enough voltage to jumpstart a fusion drive. Lear moved first. She did not scream. She exploded into motion. She tackled the nearest warden, slamming her into a rack of spare drone parts. Metal screeched and sparks showered them like fireworks. Run, Lear roared, her voice distorted by the shifting shape of her jaw. Jax did not argue. He threw the wrench at the Golden Warden, who deflected it with a casual backhand, and scrambled for the ventilation hatch Kip had pointed out earlier. Kip was already gone, having wisely vanished into the subfloor at the first sign of trouble. Jax kicked the hatch open. Lear disengaged from the melee, spinning away from a stun baton swing that would have cracked her spine. She vaulted over the workbench, grabbed Jax by the back of his jacket, and hauled him into the darkness of the shaft. They tumbled out onto a maintenance gantry hanging precariously over the Undercity. The air here was thin and smelled of ozone. Below them, the abyss of the station's lower levels stretched down into fog and neon. "Up!" Lear commanded. They scrambled up the rusted ladder to the rooftop of the processing plant. The wind whipped at them, cold and biting. Drones swarmed up from the abyss, their red eyes locking onto them. "Target acquired," a mechanical voice droned, deploying containment. Nets fired from the drones, weighted meshes electrified with blue plasma. Jax dove left, rolling across the corrugated steel roof. One net slapped the metal where he had been standing, sizzling as it discharged. He scrambled to his feet, slipping on the slick surface. "Watch out!" Lear screamed. Jax looked up. A drone had flanked him, its cannon charging. Lear did not hesitate. She leaped across the gap between the roof vents. She hit Jax, knocking him flat, covering his body with hers just as the drone fired. The stun net hit her square in the back. Lear convulsed. A guttural, agonizing sound tore from her throat as the electricity arced through her armor and into her nervous system. Her muscles locked up, hard as stone, and the smell of singing ozone and burning hair filled Jax's nose. "Lear!" Jax shouted, struggling under her weight. She snarled, fighting the paralysis. Her eyes flashed, silver to red and back to silver. She forced her arms to move, ripping the net off her back with a strength that should have been impossible for a body enduring that much voltage. She flung the net at the drone, tangling its rotors. The machine shrieked and plummeted into the fog. She collapsed on top of him, her breath coming in ragged, shallow gasps. Smoke curled from her flight suit. "We move," she rasped, forcing herself up. "We move or we are captured." Jax grabbed her arm, draping it over his shoulder. He could feel the tremors running through her, the aftershocks of the weapon designed to take down riot crowds. "I have got you," he said. "Come on." They stumbled across the rooftops, using the web of high-tension cables to cross the gaps between buildings. Jax balanced on the swaying wires, terrified of the drop, but Lear moved with instinctual balance even in her damaged state, her claws digging into the cable insulation to anchor them. They found a blind spot in the surveillance grid, a water filtration alcove shielded by heavy lead pipes. Jax dragged her inside and collapsed against the wall. Lear slid down, clutching her neck. "It calls them." She gasped. "The collar. It screams my location." Jax looked at the tracking node embedded at the base of her neck. It was pulsing rapidly, a harsh red light under the skin. "We have to get it out," Jax said. He pulled his multi-tool from his belt, flipping out the blade and the pliers. "This is going to hurt. Lear. It is going to hurt a lot." "Do it," she hissed, tilting her head forward to expose the neck. "I am not an asset. Cut it out." Jax's hands were shaking. He took a breath, steadied them against his own knee, and moved the blade to her skin. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I am so sorry." He made the incision. Lear's body went rigid. A sound escaped her, not a scream, but a high, keening whine that sounded like a wounded animal. She slammed her eyes shut, her lips pulling back to reveal her fangs. Her hands clawed at the floor, gouging deep grooves into the metal plating. "I am almost there," Jax said, sweat stinging his eyes. "I see the anchor." He grabbed the node with the pliers. It was hooked into her spine. He had to be precise, or he would paralyze her. "Hold still," he pleaded. "Please, Lear, hold still." She stopped breathing. She forced herself into absolute stillness, vibrating with the effort of not thrashing. Jax twisted the pliers. There was a wet snap. He yanked the device free. Lear screamed then, a short, sharp sound that broke off into a sob. Jax threw the bloody tracker across the alcove and immediately pressed a med patch from his kit over the wound. "It is out," he said, his voice cracking. "It is out. You are clear." Lear slumped against him, her forehead pressing against his chest. She was shaking violently. Jax wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, rocking her slightly. "I am sorry," he said again. "I hurt you. You freed me," she whispered into his jacket. She pulled back, looking up at him. Her silver eyes were wet, the pupils blown wide. There was pain there, immense and raw, but beneath it was something else, a clarity. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Skin to skin, bone to bone. It was an intimate gesture, more powerful than a kiss. It was a transfer of trust. "Handler." She breathed. "No," Jax said softly. "Just Jax." "Jax," she corrected. "Thank you." They did not stay long. The extraction had bought them silence, but the hunt was still on. They made their way down to the perimeter transport hub. With the station in lockdown, the commercial hangars were sealed, but Jax knew the smuggler routes. They found a battered atmospheric skiff, a rust bucket used for waste disposal, and hot-wired the ignition. They blasted out of the airlock just as the security doors slammed shut behind them. The landscape outside Kestrel Station was a nightmare of beauty. The station was built on the edge of a mineral-rich moon, surrounded by vast deserts of oxidized iron dust. The dunes rolled like a frozen bloody ocean. Above, the sky was a bruised purple, dominated by the swirling magnetic storms that made off-world travel so dangerous. Jax piloted the skiff low over the dunes, keeping under the radar ceiling. The wind howled against the canopy, carrying the metallic shriek of sand blasting the hull. "Sand," Jax grumbled, wiping a layer of red dust from the console. "I hate sand. It gets in the gears. It gets in the food. I am going to be finding red dust in my boots for the next 10 years. Lear sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the storm clouds with a brooding intensity. She sniffed the air recycling through the vents. "You smell like anxious meat," she said, her tone completely flat. Jax glanced at her. "Excuse me." "Your pheromones," she explained, not looking at him. "They are acrid, like a prey animal that knows the teeth are coming. It is distinct." Jax laughed, a short, incredulous bark. "Anxious meat. That is your compliment for the guy who just performed field surgery on you." She looked at him, genuinely confused by his laughter. Then, a flicker of something like embarrassment crossed her face. "It was not a compliment," she muttered. "It was a sensory observation." She shifted in her seat, crossing her arms. The movement was defensive. Jax noticed she was sweating. Despite the chill in the cabin, her skin had a flushed, feverish quality. The air in the cockpit was growing heavy, thick with a scent that was not sand or ozone. It was musk, sweet and dark, like blooming night flowers in copper. "Lear, are you okay?" She turned away, pressing her face against the cool glass of the canopy. "My cycle," she said, her voice tight. "The stress, the voltage. It triggers the biological response." Jax realized what she meant. The pheromones, the heat. "Oh," he said. "It is shameful," she whispered. "No, it is not," Jax said immediately. "It is biology." "It is designed," she corrected, her voice bitter. When the asset is stressed, the body prepares for reproduction to ensure the genetic line continues before death. It is a fail-safe. She curled in on herself. I smell like need, she said, disgust dripping from the word. I smell like I am begging to be owned. Jack set the autopilot and turned in his seat. Lear, look at me. She hesitated, then turned. Her eyes were hazy, fighting the chemical imperative flooding her system. I do not smell need, Jack said firmly. I smell Lear. He reached out, not touching her, but letting his hand rest on the console between them. And for the record, wanting something does not mean you are owned. It just means you are alive. She looked at his hand. Her chest heaved. It affects you, she accused. I can hear your heart. It skipped. Your pupils are dilated. Jax did not look away. He did not lie. Yeah, he said softly. It affects me. I am a guy. And you are, well, you are you. And the air in here is thick enough to chew. I feel it. My pulse is racing. I can't stop looking at you. She flinched, as if he had threatened her. But, Jax continued, his voice dropping to a serious, more grounding register. That is my reaction. It is not your command. You are not making me do anything. And I am not going to do anything you do not ask for. He waited until she met his eyes. You are safe, Lear. Even from the biology. She studied him, her nostrils flaring as she tested the truth of his scent. She let out a long, shuddering breath. You are a strange human, Jax. You fight the design. I am just stubborn, he said. He turned back to the controls. The humor was gone, replaced by a tense electric silence. But it was a silence they shared, not one that divided them. Ahead of them, a shape rose from the dunes. It was a jagged spire of black metal, half buried in the sand. The Lunar Research Outpost, abandoned 50 years ago, according to the official maps. The shard in Jax's pocket began to vibrate so hard it rattled against his hip. This is it, he said. They landed the skiff in the lee of the structure. The wind was ferocious here, screaming through the rusted pylons. They wrapped their faces in scarves and made their way to the airlock. Jax held up the shard. The ancient door groaned, the dust of decades cracking as the seal broke. Inside, the air was stale and cold. Emergency lights flickered on, sensing their movement. The facility was not empty. It was a tomb of data. Banks of servers lined the walls, covered in dust sheets. They found the central control room. Jax plugged the shard into the main terminal. The holographic logs sprang to life. A face appeared in the air. A woman, elegant, sharp-featured, wearing the robes of a senator. Senator Vanya, Jax said, recognizing her instantly. She is the opposition leader. She is the one fighting for more food aid. She is the good guy. The hologram spoke. Log entry 449. The famine protocols are proceeding ahead of schedule. Public desperation is at 80%. The Warden Project is ready for Phase 2. Jax felt the blood drain from his face. She is not fighting the famine, he whispered. She built it. Lear was staring at the schematic floating next to the senator's head. It was a breakdown of the ration bars. The hologram continued. Traditional indoctrination is too slow. We have introduced the hormonal triggers into the Tier 1 supply. The bond will not be psychological, it will be chemical. Lear stepped forward, her hand reaching out to touch the ghostly image of a ration capsule. The triggered rations contain a retroviral tag, the senator explained calmly. When consumed by a potential handler, the tag edits their pheromonal output. It marks them. Any warden within range will instantly recognize the scent of authority. They will not just obey. They will love. They will defend the handler with lethal intensity. Jax froze. He thought back to the alley, the way she had looked at him. Took my ration. Now I claim your bedroll. He looked at Lear. She was reading the scrolling text. Targeted distribution VIP list. Military command, political allies. And at the bottom of the list, a status update. Missing unit, Courier Drone 7. Ration capsule Alpha Prime lost in Sector 7. The ration Jax had stolen. It wasn't food. It was a marriage license written in a virus. Lear turned slowly to face him. Her face was pale, her silver eyes wide with a horror that went deeper than fear. You, she whispered. Jax stepped back, holding his hands up. I did not know, he said. Lear, I swear, I did not know. I just wanted a meal. You ate the tag, she said, her voice trembling. You marked yourself. She looked down at her own hands. The way I felt. The way I feel. It is not me. It is the virus. You smell like my mate because the senator wrote a code in your blood that tells me you are. She let out a choked laugh that sounded like a sob. It is all a lie. The possessiveness. The trust. It is just machinery. Jax felt a wave of guilt so heavy it almost crushed him. He had thought he saved her. He had thought they were partners. But he was just the guy who accidentally picked up the remote control. I stole your freedom, Jax said, his voice hollow. I broke into a capsule and I accidentally enslaved you. He sank down onto a dusty crate, putting his head in his hands. God, Lear, I am so sorry that you should leave. You should run. Get as far away from me as you can. Silence stretched between them. The wind howled outside. Then, he felt a touch on his shoulder. He looked up. Lear was standing there. She wasn't running. She was trembling, fighting every instinct in her engineered body. But she was standing there. If I run, she said softly, the bond will break my mind. It hurts to be away from you. That is the design. I won't be your chain, Jax said fiercely. I won't do it. Then break it, she said. She knelt in front of him. She took his hands and placed them on her face. Her skin was burning hot. Do you want me? She asked. Jax stared at her. Not the asset, she said. Not the weapon. Do you want me? Even knowing it is a trick? Even knowing the universe is trying to force us together? Jax looked at the silver eyes, the fierce set of her jaw, the person beneath the programming. I want you, he said, his voice rough. I want you so much it scares me. But I do not want the program. Then we kill the program, she said. She stood up and pulled him toward the medical bay at the back of the outpost. The shard had unlocked the medical files too. There was a protocol labeled Deprogramming Emergency Reset. It was brutal. It was designed to wipe a warden's mind if they went rogue. Jax looked at the biobed. This will hurt, he said, reading the warnings. It stimulates the pain centers. It forces a cognitive reboot. It asks you to choose your loyalty. If I do not do it, I am a slave, Lear said. Strap me in. Jax secured the restraints. He hated this. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was wrong, hurting her again. He activated the machine. Lear arched her back, a scream tearing from her throat as the neural probes engaged. The machine flashed images. The senator, the flag, the ration crest. State your loyalty. The computer voice boomed. Lear writhed against the straps. Civic. She gasped. Civic. No, Jax shouted, holding her hand. Fight it. Lear, who are you? State your loyalty. Pain lashed through her. Her heat cycle spiked, the biology screaming at her to submit, to be safe, to be good. I am, she choked out. She looked at Jax. She saw the fear in his eyes. She saw the man who had shared his bedroll but refused to take it, the man who smelled like anxious meat and decency. "I am mine," she screamed. The machine whined, the power surging. Error. Loyalty invalid. State secondary directive. Lear's eyes rolled back, then snapped forward, locking onto Jack's. "I choose him," she gasped. "Define relationship," the machine demanded. "Handler! No!" Lear roared, her voice shattering the sterile air. "Partner!" The machine sparked. The lights in the outpost exploded. Silence fell. Jax ripped the restraints off. Lear fell into his arms, limp, sweat-soaked, but breathing. "Did it work?" Jax whispered, brushing the hair from her face. She opened her eyes. The silver was clear. The hazy, drug-like adoration was gone, replaced by something sharper, something harder. "You still smell anxious," she whispered, a weak smile tugging at her mouth. "And you still have a terrible bedside manner." Jax laughed, tears streaming down his face. Suddenly, a red light began to strobe on the main console. Self-destruct sequence initiated. The computer announced pleasantly. "Remote override detected. Have a nice day?" "The senator," Jax said. "She knows we are here. She knows we accessed the logs." "Run!" Lear shouted. She grabbed him this time. No hesitation. No programming. Just pure, chosen survival. They sprinted for the airlock as the outpost began to groan, deep structural charges blowing the supports. They dove into the skiff just as the facility erupted. A shockwave of fire and durasteel shrapnel slammed into them. Jax gunned the engines, pushing the throttle past the red line. The explosion threw them forward, not into the clear sky, but straight into the heart of the magnetic storm. The world went white. Gravity twisted. The sky bent like a spoon. "Hold on!" Jax screamed as the skiff began to tumble through a vortex of magnetized dust where up was down and time skipped like a scratched record. Lear reached across the console and locked her hand in his. "I am here!" she yelled over the roar of the universe tearing apart. "I am right here!" And for the first time, Jax knew she meant it. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. They vanished into the storm, hand in hand, as the burning remains of the truth collapsed behind them. The gravity storm spat them out like a seed from a piece of bad fruit. The skiff, smoking and screaming in protest, slammed into the soft red shoulder of a dune, carving a trench 50 yards long before coming to a grinding, sparking halt. Jax Vane coughed, waving away the acrid smoke filling the cockpit. He popped the canopy seal. It hissed, then blew off entirely, clattering down the sandbank. "We are alive," Jax groaned, checking his limbs. "I think we are alive. Lear?" Lear was already out. She stood on the crest of the dune, the wind whipping her cloak around her. She had pulled her scarf up to cover her lower face, hiding the non-human set of her jaw and the fangs that still ached from the deprogramming session. "Movement," she said, her voice muffled by the fabric. "Large scale, approaching from the east." Jack scrambled up beside her. He squinted against the grit. On the horizon, a mountain was moving. It was not a mountain, of course. It was a caravan city, a sprawling rusted leviathan of linked vehicles, treads the size of houses churning the red sand. It looked like a dozen derelict freighters had been welded together, put on wheels, and given a fusion heartbeat. Smoke poured from its stacks, and the distinct rhythmic thump of heavy machinery vibrated through the soles of Jax's boots. "Nomads," Jax said, relief washing over him. "The Dustwalkers. They trade between the mining outposts. They are armed," Lear noted, pointing to the turret nests atop the lead crawler. "They have to be," Jax said. "Out here, you are either a predator or a spare part. Come on, hide the shard. Keep your hood up. To them, we are just runaways." They slid down the dune to meet the behemoth. The caravan did not stop for them, but it slowed. A side hatch on one of the flank runners hissed open and a rope ladder unspooled. Jax and Lear grabbed hold, hauled up by rough hands and the mechanical pull of a winch. They were dumped onto a metal deck that smelled of curry powder, unwashed bodies, and ozone. A circle of armed men and women surrounded them. Their gear was a patchwork of scavenged vac suits and desert robes. "State your business and your credit score," a woman said, stepping forward. She was old, her skin turned to leather by the sun, with silver braids woven with copper wire. This was Elder Kale, the caravan matriarch. "0 credits, Jax said, holding up his hands. "But we have labor. I am a mechanic. She is security. Our skiff died in the storm." Kale eyed Lear. Lear stood perfectly still, her head bowed, hands clasped behind her back. It was a posture of submission, but Jax knew she was calculating the trajectory of every weapon in the room. "Security," Kale scoffed. "She looks like she would blow away in a stiff breeze." "She is durable," Jax said quickly. Kale spat on the deck. "We do not need charity cases. The ration law has squeezed us dry. Kestrel Station pays half what they used to for ore and charges double for water. Every mouth here has to earn its moisture." "We will earn it," Jax promised. "Just give us a ride to the next relay." Kale stared at him, then at Lear. She signaled to her guards. "Search them for wires. If they are informants for the senator, toss them into the treads." The camp settled into a rhythm that Jax found comforting and Lear found baffling. The caravan was a closed ecosystem, a village on wheels that never stopped moving. Jax made himself useful fixing hydration pumps in the lower decks. He hid the shard wrapped in a greasy rag deep inside his tool belt. Lear was assigned to the perimeter watch, a job she took to with terrifying intensity. She insists on standing on the roof without a safety line. One of the guards complained to Jax on the second day, and she stares at the horizon like she is daring it to blink. "She takes her job seriously," Jax said, tightening a bolt. But the real challenge was the social camouflage. Lear did not know how to be small talk. In the mess hall, amidst the clamor of families eating reconstituted soy gruel, Lear sat stiffly, watching the room for threats. A small boy, no older than 7, wandered over. He was flying a battered toy drone, a little quadcopter that buzzed annoying circles around Lear's head. Lear tracked it with her eyes, her pupils contracting. "Buzz off, kid," Jax warned gently, spooning gruel into his mouth. The drone dipped low, hovering inches from Lear's nose. Lear did not blink. She reached out with lightning speed, not striking, but catching. She plucked the drone from the air by its landing skid. The boy gasped. "Hey, that is mine!" Lear held the drone up, inspecting its spinning rotors. She looked at the boy, her silver eyes intense above her scarf. "This aerial unit is structurally unsound," she said, her voice deadpan. "If it violates my airspace again, I will sever its rotors and consume its battery pack." The table went silent. Jax choked on his spoon. The boy stared at her, wide-eyed. Then, a massive grin split his face. "Whoa," he whispered. "You are going to eat the battery, that is so cool." Lear blinked, confused by the lack of fear. "It is acid," she said uncertainly. "It would burn." "Awesome," the boy declared. He ran off to tell his friends that the new guard lady was a battery-eating cyborg. Jax exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "Sever the rotors," he whispered to her. "We are trying to blend in. Lear, normal people just say, 'Stop it.'" She handed the drone back to him, careful not to crush it. "Threats of violence are a universal language," she noted. It was effective. He is no longer hovering. That night, they found a quiet spot on the roof of the rear transport. The desert stretched out around them, a black ocean under a sky bruised with purple nebulas. The wind was constant, a low roar that drowned out the noise of the engines below. Jax laid out his bedroll. It was battered, stained with oil, and the most comfortable thing he owned. Lear sat next to him, hugging her knees. She had pulled her hood down. The wind played with her hair, silver strands catching the starlight. She looked at the bedroll. "Mine," she whispered. Jax froze. They hadn't talked about the programming since the outpost. Since the explosion, Lear looked at him. "I like that word," she said. "Mine. In the lab, nothing was mine. My room was a cell. My food was a dosage. My body was an asset." She touched her own chest, her hand resting over her heart. To say mine feels like building a wall that keeps the handlers out. Jax nodded, understanding the desperate geography of her survival. "I get that," he said. "Ownership feels like safety when you have been property." "But," he continued, shifting so he was facing her, "with people, with us, mine can be tricky. It can sound like a cage." She frowned. "You said we were partners." "We are," Jax said. "That is why I want to teach you a different word." He took her hand. She flinched, then settled, her skin cool against his palm. "Choice," Jax said. He squeezed her hand gently. "You are not mine, Lear. You are yours, and I am mine. But we choose to be here, together." He looked out at the dark horizon. "If I say mine, it means I am choosing to stand next to you. It does not mean I hold the deed to your soul." She processed this, her brow furrowing as she rewrote the definitions in her head. "So," she said slowly, "if I want to touch you, I do not need a permit." "No permit," Jax said, "but you need consent." He turned back to her. "We make a pact, right here. The stop pact. The stop pact. If I do something you do not like, you say stop, and I stop. Instantly, it's no questions. And if you do something I do not like, I say stop, and you stop." Lear tested the word, stop. "It is a command override. It is a boundary," Jax corrected. "It means we are equals." She looked at his hand holding hers. She looked at his face, illuminated by the distant glow of the engine exhaust. "Touch me," she said. Jax hesitated. "Where?" She guided his hand to her cheek. She leaned into it, closing her eyes. A low, thrumming sound vibrated in her throat. It wasn't a growl. It was a purr, a sound of contentment that she seemed entirely unaware she was making. Jax stroked her cheek with his thumb. "Stop?" he asked softly. "No," she whispered. "Continue." The caravan moved into the deep waste, a region of the desert that even the nomads feared. "We are crossing the moon scar," Elder Kale announced over the intercom. "Seal the viewports. Do not look at the light." Jax and Lear were on the observation deck. They did not seal the ports. The sand outside changed color. It went from red to a pale, ghostly white. And then it began to glow. "Bioluminescence," Jax murmured. "The dust here is charged with static from the orbital ring." But it wasn't just dust. As the caravan rumbled forward, massive, crystalline plants erupted from the dunes. They looked like glass ferns, towering 30 feet high, pulsing with a soft, blue rhythm. And as Lear watched, the plants shifted. They turned toward the caravan, not toward the engines or the heat, toward her. Lear pressed her hand against the glass. Outside, a field of dormant buds burst open in a wave of azure light, tracking her movement as the vehicle passed. It was a salute, a recognition. "They see me," Lear whispered. Jax watched the phenomenon, his mind racing. The shard was alien tech. The plants were alien ecology. You are not just engineered, Jax realized aloud. The senator did not build you from scratch. Lear, she spliced you. She used DNA from whatever built this place. Lear looked at the glowing garden, her reflection ghosting over the alien flowers. I am part of the world, she said, a strange wonder in her voice. I am not a monster made in a tube. I am local. For the first time, she did not look like an exile. She looked like a queen surveying her garden. The reverie was shattered by the scream of engines. Not the low thrum of the caravan, but the high-pitched whine of anti-grav drives. Attack! The caravan alarms blared. Raiders! Port side! Jax and Lear ran to the rear airlock. It wasn't raiders. Cutting through the dust clouds were 6 sleek white hoverbikes. The riders wore the gleaming white armor of the wardens. They found us, Lear hissed. She pulled her hood tight, checking the seals on her borrowed vac suit. Stay here, she ordered Jax. Stop, Jax said. She froze. The pact. We go together, Jax said. I drive, you shoot. They scrambled onto one of the caravan's defense skiffs, a small, open-topped buggy docked on the flank. Jax punched the ignition. The skiff dropped onto the sand, its wheels kicking up a rooster tail of glowing white dust. The wardens were fast. They strafed the caravan, firing plasma cannons that melted the heavy armor plating of the lead crawler. Target the treads, one of the wardens commanded over the open frequency. Immobilize the transport. They are not trying to kill the nomads, Jax yelled over the wind. They are trying to stop the caravan so they can search it. For us. Lear stood up in the back of the bouncing buggy. She did not have a gun. She did not need one. Get me closer, she shouted. Jax wrenched the wheel. The buggy drifted, sand spraying, and roared toward the lead bike. A warden spotted them. She peeled off, her lance leveled at Jax's head. Lear leaped. She cleared the 10 feet between the vehicles in a blur of motion. She landed on the back of the warden's bike. The warden spun around, but Lear was faster. She grabbed the warden by the chest plate and threw her, controlled, precise, into a soft dune. Lear took the handlebars. She revved the bike, the anti-grav engine screaming. She was terrifying. She wove through the formation, using the bike as a battering ram. But Jax noticed something. When a warden fired a missile at a transport carrying children, the same transport where the boy with the drone lived, Lear did not attack the shooter. She drove her bike directly into the path of the missile. She bailed out at the last second. The bike exploded in a fireball, absorbing the impact. The transport was safe. Lear hit the sand, rolling, and came up sprinting. She leaped onto the side of the moving caravan, her claws digging into the metal, and hauled herself up to a turret emplacement. She ripped the heavy repeater gun from its mount and turned it on the remaining bikes. Leave! She roared, her voice amplified by the suit's speakers. The wardens, seeing their leader down and their target armed with a cannon, broke formation. They peeled off into the darkness. Jax pulled the buggy alongside the crawler. Lear jumped down, landing in the passenger seat. She was panting. Ash smeared across her face. You destroyed a bike to save the kids, Jax said, steering them back to the dock. Inefficient use of resources, Lear muttered, trying to hide her shaking hands. But the boy, he thought I was cool. Jax smiled. You are cool, Lear. Back inside, the mood was somber. The attack had been repelled, but the message was clear. No one was safe. Elder Kale met them in the cargo bay. She held up a small, charred object. We found this on the hull, she said. It was stuck to a magnetic limpet mine that failed to detonate. Jax took it. It was a data chip. Scratched into the casing was a symbol, a blue toaster. Kip, Jax whispered. He plugged the chip into his datapad. A text file opened. Jax, if you are reading this, I am in a hole. They grabbed me, but I hid the payload. The broadcast tower on Kestrel has a maintenance cycle at Oro 200 tomorrow. The firewall drops for 10 minutes. You have the key. You can upload the logs. Make them listen. Pete, my toaster is still in the shop. They captured Kip, Jax said, his stomach churning. He led them away from us, but he left us a window. We have to go back, Lear said. Kale shook her head. Impossible. Since the attack, Kestrel Station has declared emergency calorie law, total lockdown. No ships in or out without a bio-coded ration stamp. If you do not have a calorie account, you are arrested on site. We do not need a ship, Jax said, looking at the schematics on the chip. And we do not need a ration stamp. We just need to smell like garbage. The plan was simple and disgusting. The caravan was scheduled to dump its biological waste at the station's recycling airlock, a one-way valve for turning desert refuse into station fertilizer. But getting in was only half the problem. Blending in was the other half. We need to rehearse, Jax said. They stood in the back of a cargo hauler. Jax had set up 3 mannequins scavenged from a trade stall. He had drawn angry faces on them with grease. Okay, Lear, Jax said. Scene 1. You are walking down the corridor. A citizen bumps into you. What do? Lear narrowed her eyes at the mannequin. She stepped forward, her posture rigid. I assess his threat level, she said. I locate his jugular. I prepare to— Stop, Jax said. No jugulars. But he touched me. Lear argued. Physical contact implies aggression. In a crowded station, it implies clumsy. Jax said, you say, watch it, buddy. Or you just grunt. Try grunting. Lear looked at the mannequin. She let out a low, menacing growl that sounded like a tectonic plate shifting. Too much wolf, Jax said, more annoyed commuter. Less apex predator. Lear sighed. She slumped her shoulders. She looked at the mannequin with deep, existential weariness. Ugh, she said flatly. Perfect, Jax clapped. That is the spirit of Kestrel Station. Total indifference to existence. Now, scene 2. Someone asks you about the weather? There is no weather, Lear said. It is a dome. Exactly. So you say. Recyclers are loud today. Recyclers are loud today, Lear repeated, sounding like a robot learning to love. You are doing great, Jax lied. Suddenly, Lear stopped. She dropped the act. She looked at the mannequin, her hands trembling. I cannot go back. Jax stepped closer. What is it? The smells, she whispered. The lights, the sounds of the caloric scanners. It is where they made me. If I go back, what if the programming wakes up? What if the senator speaks and I break? She looked at him, terrified. What if I forget I chose you? Jax took her face in his hands, and then I will remind you. He pulled a small strip of cloth from his pocket, a piece of the scarf she had worn in the desert. He tied it around her wrist. This is the anchor, Jax said. If you feel the slide, if you feel the programming coming back, you look at this. You remember the sand. You remember the boy with the drone. You remember the stop pact. He pressed his forehead to hers. I will be right there. I will be your external hard drive. I will hold the memories until you get them back. Lear touched the cloth on her wrist. Anchor, she whispered. Okay. They injected the waste airlock at 100 hours. They were wearing pressure suits covered in literal refuse, organic sludge, coffee grounds, and chemical waste. They floated in the zero-gravity vacuum of the disposal field, surrounded by a cloud of frozen garbage that glittered like diamonds in the starlight. It is, Surprisingly beautiful. Lear's voice crackled over the comms. If you ignore the smell, Jax replied. They drifted toward the maintenance hatch. Jax used the shard to override the lock. The mechanism turned silently. They pulled themselves inside, shedding the filthy suits in the decontamination chamber. Underneath, they wore stolen station maintenance coveralls. They moved through the service tunnels, heading up toward the spire. The station was quiet, but it was the silence of a held breath. The corridors were empty. The screens on the walls flashed a single red message. Emergency calorie law in effect. Report to distribution hubs. They reached the base of the broadcast tower. It was a massive spire of glass and steel that pierced the center of the dome. The door was unsealed. That is wrong, Jax whispered. It should be locked. Maybe Kip's hack opened it, Lear suggested, though she sounded doubtful. They entered the lift. The ascent was smooth. The city fell away beneath them, a grid of dark streets and hungry lights. The lift doors opened on the observation deck. It was a vast circular room with a floor-to-ceiling view of the artificial moon that hung above the station. The light was silver and cold. In the center of the room, standing by the main console, was a figure. She wore robes of deep midnight blue. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. She was watching the moon. Senator Vanya turned around. She smiled. It was a warm, welcoming smile that did not reach her eyes. "Hello, Lear," she said softly. Lear froze. Her hand went to her wrist, gripping the cloth anchor. "And Mr. Vane," the senator continued, looking at Jax, "you smell terrible, but you are right on time." She tapped the console. "I received your friend Kip's message too," she said. "I thought I would save you the trouble of breaking in. The broadcast is ready." She gestured to the microphone. "Shall we tell the people the truth? Or shall we tell them what they need to hear?" Lear stepped forward, a low growl building in her chest. "We are here to end you," she said. The senator laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound. "End me? My dear, you are me." She raised her hand. In her palm was a small device, a remote emitter. She pressed the button. A scent hit the room. It was not a smell so much as a command. It was the scent of absolute authority. Lear gasped, dropping to her knees, clutching her head. "The anchor!" Jax shouted. "Lear, look at the anchor!" But the senator smiled, looking like she owned the moonlight, the station, and the very concept of destiny. "Welcome home, asset," she said. Senator Vanya stood at the center of the observation deck, framed by the cold, skeletal light of the artificial moon. In her hand, the small silver emitter hummed with a frequency that was below hearing but deafening to the blood. She did not look like a tyrant. She looked like a disappointed teacher. "You are trembling, Lear," the senator said, her voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "Do not fight it. It is biology. It is peace." Lear was on her knees. Her hands were clawing at the polished floor, gouging deep white scratches into the black tile. Her pupils had blown wide, swallowing the silver irises until her eyes were black pools of instinct. The scent pouring from the emitter was not a smell in the traditional sense. It was a neurochemical key that fit perfectly into the lock of her engineered brain. It smelled like safety. It smelled like the end of all questions. It smelled like the absolute, crushing comfort of obedience. Jax Vane stood beside her, his hands hovering, terrified to touch her and trigger a defensive reflex. "What are you doing to her?" Jax shouted, the sound raw in the sterile room. "I am fixing a malfunction," Vanya replied calmly. She adjusted the dial on the emitter. "You see, Mr. Vane, you think you stole a person, but you stole a prototype. The famine on Kestrel Station is not an accident of logistics. It is a calculated stress test. Jack stared at her. The shard in his pocket felt heavy, like a stone dragging him down. Calculated? Jack spat. People are eating paste made from recycled cardboard. Children are dying of malnutrition in Sector 7. And in Sector 1, crime is down 80%, Vanya countered smoothly. When people are hungry, they are chaotic. But when they are starving, they become manageable. They look for a savior. They look for order. She gestured to the sprawling station below the glass. I engineered the famine to create the panic, she explained, as if discussing a weather pattern. The panic justifies the Emergency Powers Act. The act authorizes the deployment of the wardens. And the wardens? They ensure that the new order is permanent. Stability. Mr. Vane. It requires a firm hand and a loyal dog. She looked down at Lear, and she is the most loyal of them all. A success. Lear let out a low, agonizing whine. Her muscles were bunching, fighting a war against her own nervous system. Her head turned slowly toward the senator, drawn by the scent, her neck baring itself in submission. Jax dropped to his crouch, placing himself directly in her line of sight. Lear, he said sharply. She did not focus. Her eyes were glazing over. Asset Lear VX, the senator commanded softly. Come to heel. Lear's body jerked forward. She reached out, clutching Jax's sleeve, her grip tight enough to tear the fabric. She was drowning, and he was the only driftwood in the ocean. Jax grabbed her shoulders. He could feel the heat radiating off her skin, the bioengineered fever of forced imprinting. Lear, listen to me, Jax said. He pitched his voice low, trying to cut through the chemical noise in her head. Mine, Lear whispered, but the word was wrong. It sounded like a question. It sounded like a plea to be possessed. No, Jax said. He tightened his grip. Stop. The word hung in the air. It was their pact, the safety word. The one command that superseded all others because it was based on consent, not design. Lear froze. The single syllable hit her like a bucket of ice water. It was a boundary they had built together in the desert, a wall made of choice. Stop, Jax repeated, staring into her black eyes. I am telling you to stop, not because I own you, but because you asked me to. Lear blinked. The blackness in her eyes receded, just a fraction, revealing a sliver of silver. She gasped, sucking in air as if she had been underwater for minutes. She looked at the senator, then at Jax. Jax, she choked out. Good, Jax said, his heart hammering against his ribs. Stay with me. Stay in the room. The senator frowned. She tapped the emitter, increasing the output. Interesting, Vanya murmured. The imprinting is fighting a contradictory stimulus. The bond logic is confused. She looked at Jax with a new measure of respect. You have managed to override 1 billion credits of genetic programming with a single word. You are a natural handler, Mr. Vane. I am a partner, Jax snarled, standing up and pulling Lear with him. She stumbled, leaning heavily against his side, but she was standing. Vanya sighed. She deactivated the emitter, sliding it into her pocket. Very well. If biology will not work, let us try economics. She clasped her hands. Give her to me. Jax, walk away. If you do, I will wipe your debt. I will grant you Tier 1 citizenship. You will have a penthouse in the spire, real food, steak, wine, fresh vegetables grown in the private gardens, a clean identity. You can be anyone you want to be. Jax laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. You think I want a penthouse while my friends are eating algae? I think everyone has a price, Vanya said. You are a salvage runner. You understand value. She is a weapon. You are a mechanic. You have no use for her. Jax looked at Lear. She was watching him, waiting. She was not begging him to refuse. She was simply witnessing him, letting him make his own choice. She is not a weapon, Jax said, his voice ringing with a sudden absolute clarity. And the ration system is not broken. It is weaponized. You are not saving the station. Vanya, you are holding it hostage. Vanya's face hardened. The mask of the benevolent leader slipped, revealing the steel beneath. Then you are an enemy of the state, she said. She raised her hand and snapped her fingers. Kill them. The shadows at the edge of the room detached themselves. Drones dropped from the ceiling vents, their rotors screaming. Doors slid open, and a squad of armored wardens poured in. They were not the pristine white guards from the desert. These were the heavy enforcers clad in matte black armor, carrying shock pikes and riot shields. Lear pushed herself off Jax. She was still shaking, her system flooded with conflicting hormones, but her eyes were silver and sharp. Cover, she yelled. She shoved Jax behind a bank of servers just as the air filled with plasma bolts. The observation deck became a kill box. Glass shattered as stray shots hit the viewing panels. Drones swooped like angry wasps, firing stun nets and kinetic rounds. Jax scrambled to the terminal Kip had indicated on the chip. I am uploading the override, Jax shouted over the noise of the firefight. Keep them off me. I will try, Lear shouted back. She vaulted over the server bank, shifting in midair. Her claws extended, sparking against the floor as she landed. She moved like a hurricane, deflecting a shock pike with her forearm and sweeping the legs of a black-armored warden. Jax jammed the data chip into the port. Access denied. The screen flashed in angry red letters. Security firewall active. It is blocked, Jax yelled. Kip's key isn't working. Vanya laughed from the safety of the upper gantry, where she had retreated behind a blast shield. Did you think I would leave the broadcast system unguarded? Vanya called out. The firewall is adaptive. It learns, Jax typed furiously, trying to bypass the encryption. Come on. Kip, he muttered. You said this was a skeleton key. Suddenly, his earpiece crackled. A high-pitched whine cut through the static, followed by a looped audio file. Anxious meat. Jax froze, his fingers hovering over the keys. Anxious meat. Anxious meat. It was Lear's voice. The recording from the desert. The comm system had glitched, picking up the last buffered audio file and looping it on the tactical frequency. Jax looked up. A drone was hovering 3 feet from his face, charging its laser. Anxious meat. Jax snorted. A laugh bubbled up in his chest, hysterical, terrified, and completely inappropriate. Really? He yelled at the universe. Now! Lear slammed into the drone, knocking it out of the air. She landed beside him, panting. Why are you laughing? She demanded, wiping blue drone fluid from her cheek. My headset is calling me meat, Jax yelled, ducking as a plasma bolt scorched the server casing. It is very distracting. Focus! Handler! Lyra roared, spinning to catch a warden's fist before it could crush Jax's skull. She threw the attacker back, but another one stepped forward. This one was different. She wore no helmet. Her hair was cut short, and her eyes were a piercing, vibrant violet. She moved with a casual arrogance that mirrored Vanya's. Unit Saul, Lear hissed, stepping between Jax and the new threat. Unit Lear, Saul replied. She held a double-bladed energy staff. You look terrible. Your pheromones are a disaster. You smell like conflict. I smell like choice. Lear spat. Saul laughed, twirling the staff. Choice is heavy. Sister, it is exhausting. Look at you. You are tired. You are fighting your own blood. Saul gestured to the senator on the balcony. She offers purpose. She offers a quiet mind. Why fight for these humans? They are weak. They are messy. They die if you forget to feed them. Devotion is comfort. Lear, to belong is to be at peace. Lear hesitated, her shoulders slumped slightly. She is right, Lear whispered, not to Sewell, but to herself. It is comfort, to not have to decide, to just be held. Jack stopped typing. He looked at Lear's back. He saw the exhaustion in the curve of her spine. He knew what she was feeling, the siren call of the void. Lear, Jack said softly. Lear looked up at Sewell. You are right, Lear said. Devotion is comfort. Sewell smiled, lowering her staff. Come back to the pack. Lear. But, Lear continued, her voice rising, gaining steel. Comfort is not the point. A cage is comfortable. A grave is comfortable. She extended her claws, the sound of the metallic sheath snapping back echoing in the room. I am not an asset. I am not a pet. And I refuse to be owned, even by my own cravings. She launched herself at Saul. The clash was titanic. Sparks flew as claws met energy staff. They moved faster than Jax could track, a blur of violet and silver violence. Lear fought not with the mechanical precision of the wardens, but with a desperate, scrappy creativity she had learned from the streets. She used the environment, kicking a server tower onto Sewell, bouncing off the walls, fighting dirty, on the balcony. Senator Vanya watched her elite guard losing ground. Her expression shifted from amusement to annoyance. Enough, Vanya said. She walked to a master control panel on the wall. If they want to fight for the people, let them see what the people are worth. She slammed her hand down on a large red lever. Alert! The station AI boomed. Ration lock initiated. Sector seal engaged. Throughout Kestrel Station, the blast doors slammed shut. In the lower levels, the food dispensers, which had been trickling out meager portions, shut off completely. The water valves closed. The air recyclers throttled down to minimum viability. On the screens in the observation deck, Jack saw the camera feeds. He saw panic erupting in the Undercity. Crowds were pounding on the sealed doors of the ration depots. A riot was starting, fueled by sudden, absolute, terrified hunger. What did you do? Jack screamed, looking up at the balcony. I am accelerating the timeline, Vanya said coldly. I would rather starve this station to death than let it fall into chaos. If I cannot rule it, I will reset it. Jax looked at the terminal. The firewall was still holding. We cannot break the encryption, Jax said, despair clawing at his throat. It is too strong. He felt the shard in his pocket again. It was hot, burning hot. He pulled it out. The metallic fragment was glowing with a pulsing blue light that matched the rhythm of Lear's heart. It isn't just a key, Jax realized. It is an override. He looked at the port on the console. It wasn't a standard data slot. It was a biometric interface, a scanner plate designed for a hand, but not a human hand. Lear! Jax shouted. Lear kicked Sewell in the chest, sending the violet-eyed warden crashing into a wall. She scrambled back to Jax. What? The shard. Jax held it up. It wants you. It needs warden biometrics to authorize the override. The system. It was built to be controlled by the senator's pets. Lear looked at the console. She looked at the flashing red lights of the ration lock. If I link in, she said, staring at the interface. I have to open my mind to the system, the senator's network. She looked at Jax, her eyes wide with fear. If I connect, she can get in. She can rewrite me. She can force the command. Jax hesitated. He looked at the screens showing the rioting crowds. He looked at Vanya, who was watching them with a predatory smile. If you do not, everyone starves, Jax said. But I am not going to order you. I am not going to ask you to sacrifice yourself. Lear looked at the interface. She could feel the data stream waiting for her. It felt like a vast, cold ocean. If I change, Lear whispered, if the system makes me empty again, will you still look at me? Jax grabbed her hand. I will look at you, he said. But if I am not me? If I am just a machine? Feelings are not crimes, Jax said fiercely. And programming isn't a soul, even if they scramble your head. Lear, I know who you are. I know you eat batteries and threaten vending machines and save kids who annoy you. He squeezed her hand. You are the one who chose. That does not go away. Lear took a deep breath. She reached out and took the shard from Jax. She pressed it into the interface slot. Then she placed her hand on the scanner. Do not let go, she commanded him. I have you, Jax said. She closed her eyes. Biometric confirmed. Asset LIAR Vex detected. Override initiated. The reaction was instantaneous. Luminous blue circuitry bloomed under Lear's skin. It started at her fingertips and raced up her arm, glowing through the fabric of her flight suit. It spread across her neck, her face, lighting up her veins like liquid moonlight. She threw her head back and screamed. It was a sound of digital agony. Her body arched, her back bowing. Jax held her hand with both of his. He could feel the data rushing through her, a torrent of information, codes, logs, and commands. On the big screen, the red access. Denied message flickered. Uploading. 10%. Stop her! Vanya shrieked. The senator pulled a pistol from her robes and fired. The shot pinged off the server bank. Sewell and the other wardens scrambled to their feet, charging the console. Jax pulled his pistol, the scavenger junk gun he had barely used, and fired blindly over the console. Stay back, he yelled. 30%. Lear was shaking violently. Her eyes were open, but they were pure white light. The system. She gasped, her voice sounding like it was coming from everywhere at once. It is heavy. She is trying to hold the door shut. Push. Lear! Jax shouted. Push back. I am claiming the bedroll, she screamed, the metaphor becoming a weapon in her mind. 60%. The screens around the room began to change. The camera feeds of the riots were replaced by documents, logs, videos of Vanya ordering the famine, spreadsheets of calorie diversion. It was broadcasting. The truth was leaking out to every screen on Kestrel Station. Vanya saw her narrative crumbling. She saw the end of her reign scrolling across the monitors in high-definition text. No, the senator whispered. She aimed her pistol, not at Lear, at the power coupling above the main console. She fired. The energy conduit exploded. A massive arc of blue electricity blasted downward. It hit the console. It hit Lear. The explosion threw Jax backward. He slammed into the floor, his ears ringing. Debris rained down around him. The room was filled with smoke and sparking wires. The emergency alarms changed from the ration lock siren to a terrifying, discordant klaxon. Critical failure. Structural integrity compromised. Gravity stabilizers failing. Jax sat up, coughing. Lear! She was slumped against the ruined console. The blue light in her veins was fading, replaced by the angry red of burns. Jax scrambled over to her. He touched her face. Lear? She opened her eyes. They were silver, dull, exhausted, but silver. Did we win? She rasped. Jax looked at the screen. Upload paused. 89%. It stopped, Jax said, looking at the destroyed power coupling. She cut the power. The broadcast is incomplete. Lear groaned, trying to stand. We have to finish it, she said. How? The console is dead. Manual completion. She gasped. The transmitter dish. On the roof. We have to bridge the connection. The station shuddered. The floor tilted 5 degrees to the right. The explosion had damaged the gravity generators for the spire. Vanya was gone. She had fled during the explosion. "We have to go," Jack said, pulling Lear up. "The whole tower is coming down." "To the roof," Lear insisted, stumbling. They ran. They exited the observation deck onto the external catwalk that spiraled up the antenna array. The wind here was ferocious, a gale force howling of thin atmosphere and dust. The catwalk was swaying. Below them, the station lights were flickering out, sector by sector. As the power grid failed, the station was going dark. Alarms screamed into the night. Warning, catastrophic failure. Jax held Lear tight as they climbed. The metal groaned beneath their feet. A section of the walkway 10 feet behind them sheared off and plummeted into the darkness. "Just a little further," Jax yelled over the wind. They reached the base of the main dish. A control box hung open, wires sparking in the gale. Lear lunged for it. She grabbed the 2 severed cables. She looked at Jax. "I have to be the circuit," she said. She gripped the live wires. Current surged through her. She screamed, her body lighting up again, not with the gentle data flow of before, but with the raw, jagged energy of the station's dying heart. Upload resumed. On the giant screens visible from the catwalk, in the city below, the fragments of truth began to play again. The senator's voice, the logs, the proof. It was working. Jax grabbed her waist, trying to pull her back, but she held on. "Lear, let go. It is done." She held on for one more second, one more heartbeat of agony to ensure the message was sent. Then she let go. She collapsed into his arms. The station went completely black for a second. Then, slowly, the emergency lights flickered on, not the red of the lockdown, but the soft white glow of the civilian safety grid. The ration lock lifted. Below them, the doors to the depots opened. Jax held Lear on the swaying catwalk, the wind tearing at their clothes. "You did it," he whispered into her hair. "You crazy battery-eating wolf. You did it." She looked up at him, her face smudged with ash and blood. "We did it, handler," she whispered, and then she smiled. "I mean, Jax." The catwalk groaned again, a terrible, rending metal shriek. The supports were giving way. "Run," Jax said. They turned and sprinted back toward the maintenance hatch as the tower began to tilt into the void, the truth blazing on every screen behind them. The dust from the collapsing broadcast tower had barely settled when Kestrel Station woke up. It was not a gentle waking. It was the sudden, violent gasping of a sleeper realizing they were being suffocated. Jax, Vane, and Lear stumbled out of a service hatch 3 levels below the ruined observation deck. They were covered in soot, their clothes torn, Lear's arm makeshift bandaged with a strip of Jax's shirt. They emerged onto the upper promenade, expecting gunfire. Instead, they found silence. It was the silence of 10,000 people staring at the sky. Every screen in the promenade, from the massive advertising boards to the tiny ticker tapes on the vending machines, was scrolling the truth. The upload Lear had nearly died to bridge was looping. Log entry 7-9. Subject, artificial scarcity. Goal, compliance. Warden protocol, biological override. Status, active. Senator Vanya, let them starve. Hunger is a better cage than steel. Jax leaned against a railing, his legs trembling. He watched a family huddled near a closed nutrient kiosk. The father was reading the scrolling text, his face twisting from confusion to a terrifying, cold rage. "It worked," Jax whispered. Below them, on the main concourse, the stalemate broke. A squad of civic security officers stood in a phalanx, their riot shields locked. Facing them was a crowd of dock workers, salvage runners, and mothers holding empty ration cards. "Order!" a captain shouted, his voice cracking. "Disperse immediately." A woman in the front row held up a data pad showing the leaked log of the captain's own calorie bonus, a bribe for loyalty while his sector went hungry. "You knew?" she screamed. "You were eating real meat while we boiled leather?" The captain faltered. He looked at the screen. He looked at the hungry faces of his neighbors. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his shield. He unclipped his helmet and let it drop to the deck with a hollow clatter. "I did not know," he said, his voice barely audible. "I swear." The line fractured. Some officers threw down their weapons. Others, terrified of the mob, retreated toward the lift clusters. Civilians surged forward not to loot, but to form human chains around the ration depots, breaking the locks with pry bars and distributing the stock with frantic, organized efficiency. "We need to move," Lear said. Her voice was rough, her silver eyes scanning the chaos. "The head is cut, but the body still thrashes. The body." Suddenly, the audio on the promenade screen shrieked. The scrolling logs vanished, replaced by a live feed. Senator Vanya appeared. She was no longer composed. Her hair was wild, her robe singed, standing in the cold blue light of the Ration core, the station's central processing hub. "Citizens of Kestrel," Vanya's voice boomed, echoing off the dome. "Do not be deceived by this hacker propaganda. The station is under attack by biological terrorists." The screen shifted to a grainy, distorted image of Lear fighting on the tower. The moment her claws were out, her eyes glowing with the upload energy. "Look at it," Vanya shouted. "It is not human. It is a feral asset gone rogue. It has corrupted the network to spread lies. It wants to destroy the station's stability. I am the only thing standing between you and the void." The crowd wavered. Fear was a habit, and Vanya knew exactly how to press the trigger. People looked around, eyeing the shadows, eyeing each other. "She is turning it back," Jax said. "She is making you the monster." Lear looked at the giant screen, at her own distorted face. She looked at the people, the fear creeping back into their eyes. She pulled her hood down. She wiped the soot from her face. "Get me a camera," she said. "What?" "I am done hiding in the vents. Handler, if she wants a monster, she can look me in the eye." Jack scanned the area. A news drone, automated and confused by the conflicting signals, was hovering near a shattered kiosk. Jax whistled, waving his arms. He grabbed a piece of debris and threw it, knocking the drone's stabilizer so it dipped low. Lear jumped. She grabbed the drone, hauled it down, and ripped the casing off the lens to expose the manual interface. She jammed her thumb, still glowing faintly with residual code, into the port. "Override," she commanded. "Broadcast this." The screens on the promenade flickered. Vanya's face was cut in half, then replaced by Lear. She did not look like a hero. She looked like a wreck. She was bleeding. Her eyes were silver and alien. Her teeth were too sharp. She looked exactly like what she was, something made in a lab to hurt people. "I am not a terrorist," Lear said. Her voice was not the booming oratory of a politician. It was the raspy, tired voice of a soldier. "I am a warden. My serial number is Lear VX, and the senator is right. I was not born. I was designed." The crowd on the promenade went silent. They stared at the monster who was speaking like a person. "I was made to hunt you," Lear continued, leaning into the lens. "I was made to smell your lies and break your doors. I was programmed to think that obedience was love." She looked to the side, at Jax, who was standing just out of frame. "But I learned something. I learned that you can feel hunger and not take. I learned that you can be strong and not hurt." She looked back at the camera. "The senator wants you to be afraid of me because I am different. But she is the one who treated you like lab rats. She engineered your starvation to see if you would break. She engineered my devotion to see if I would kill. Lear paused, her chest heaving. We are not experiments. We are not assets. We are awake. She signaled Jax. He stepped into the frame. He looked terrified, dirty, and utterly ordinary. I am Jax Vane, he said. I am a salvage runner. And I am the guy who stole the ration that started this whole mess. He took a breath. I spent my whole life running. Scavenging scraps, looking out for number one. I thought if I just kept my head down, the system would leave me alone. But that is the lie. The system counts on you keeping your head down. He looked at the camera, addressing the thousands of faces he knew were watching. I stole. I ran. I made mistakes. But accountability isn't about hating yourself. It is about choosing better next time. We are choosing better. We are coming for the core. If you want to eat, if you want to be free, meet us there. He cut the feed. The silence on the promenade held for 1 second. Then, it shattered. Not into panic, but into a roar of approval. To the core, someone shouted. Jax and Lear began to run, and this time, the station ran with them. They moved through the industrial sector, a tide of people flowing behind them, but the path to the core was blocked. A heavy transport vehicle, an armored prison hauler, had jackknifed across the main arterial tunnel. Wardens in black armor were firing riot rounds into the approaching crowd, trying to hold the line. The back doors of the transport were banging. Someone was inside, kicking the metal. "Let me out!" a muffled voice screamed. "I have rights. I have a toaster that needs calibration." "Kip!" Jax yelled. He looked at Lear. "Can you clear the road?" Lear looked at the blockade. She nodded. "Stay low." She launched herself forward. She did not use the crowd as cover. She sprinted ahead, drawing the fire. Plasma bolts slapped into the Durasteel walls around her. She slid under the chassis of the transport, slashed the hydraulic lines of the rear brakes with her claws, and rolled out the other side. She leaped onto the roof of the cab. The driver, a civic security loyalist, looked up in horror just before Lear punched through the roof and ripped the ignition console out. The transport died. Jax ran to the back doors. He used the shard, which was now dull and cooling, to short the lock. The doors swung open. Kip tumbled out, followed by 24 other prisoners, dissidents, journalists, people who had asked too many questions about the food supply. "Jax!" Kip grabbed him, shaking him by the shoulders. "You look terrible. You smell like burning garbage and victory. We need a way into the core," Jax said. "The main blast doors are sealed." Kip grinned. He tapped his temple. "Good thing I was arrested then. This transport, it has a level 5 clearance transponder. If we ram it into the loading dock, the sensors will think it is a friendly delivery until it is too late." "You want to ram the core?" Jax asked. "I want to knock politely with a 20-ton truck," Kip corrected. They cleared the civilians back. Lear took the wheel of the disabled transport, hot-wiring the fusion drive with sparks flying from her fingertips. Jax and Kip strapped into the passenger seats. "Hold on to your anxious meat," Lear yelled. She gunned the engine. The transport lurched forward, gaining speed. The black-armored wardens scattered. The loading bay doors of the ration core loomed ahead, massive reinforced steel. Lear did not slow down. She accelerated. The collision felt like the end of the world. Metal shrieked, gears exploded, and the transport smashed through the blast doors, skidding across the polished floor of the core's intake chamber in a shower of sparks and debris. They stumbled out of the wreckage, coughing. They were inside. The ration core was not a factory. It was a cathedral. The ceiling vaulted hundreds of feet high, lost in shadow. The walls were lined with towering server banks that hummed with a sound like a choir of bees. In the center, suspended in a column of anti-gravity, was the calorie-counting mechanism, a complex array of glass and light that resembled a beating heart. The air was freezing, and standing at the altar of this machine church was Senator Vanya. She was not alone. She was surrounded by the last of her elite guard, Unit Saul and 4 other wardens. But Vanya was not looking at them. She was looking at the ceiling, above the core, through a transparent dome. The artificial moon hung huge and oppressive. "Do you see it?" Vanya asked, her voice calm, amplified by the room's acoustics. She pointed to the moon. "It is not just a light source. It is a stimulus." Jack stepped forward, his pistol raised. "It is over. Vanya. The broadcast is out. The people are coming." Vanya turned. Her eyes were bright, manic. The station was never a colony, Mr. Vane. It was a behavioral laboratory. The ration grid and the lunar cycle are synced. We starve them when the moon is full. We feed them when it wanes. We created a Pavlovian response on a societal level. She laughed. "And you think you can just break it with a speech? You think these animals are capable of freedom?" She walked to the central console. "I have one failsafe left. The reset pulse." She placed her hand on a red glass panel. It releases a concentrated pheromone burst into the ventilation system. Combined with a strobe from the moon, it wipes short-term memory. It forces a reboot of the amygdala. She looked at Lear. Specifically, it targets the warden physiology. It will strip away your confusion. It will strip away your choice. You will wake up, and you will know only one thing. I am your mother, and you must obey. Lear growled, stepping over the debris. I will tear it apart before you can trigger it. You are too slow, asset. Vanya pressed the panel. The room turned white. A high-pitched scream erupted from the machines. The artificial moon above flashed with a strobe light so fast it felt like a physical blow. Vents hissed open, releasing a thick pink gas that smelled of ozone and absolute authority. Lear crumpled. It was instantaneous. She dropped to her knees, clutching her head. Behind her, Sol and the other wardens did the same, screaming as their minds were scrubbed. Jax ran to her. Lear, fight it! Lear was gasping. Her eyes rolled back. Mother, she whispered. Command. Waiting. No, Jax shouted. He grabbed her face. Look at me. The gas was filling the room. Jax coughed, his own head spinning, though the effect was far worse for the engineered biology of the wardens. Vanya smiled. It is beautiful, isn't it? The piece of a blank slate. Lear's hand shot out. She grabbed Jax's wrist. Her claws dug in, drawing blood. The pain was sharp, real. Anchor, she gasped. She looked at the strip of cloth on her wrist. She looked at Jax. Stop, she commanded herself. She forced her body to stand. Her muscles were spasming. Her brain was screaming at her to lie down, to submit, to forget the last week. She looked at the emitter, a spinning turbine at the base of the gravity column. It was pumping the gas. She roared. It was a sound of pure agony. She ran at the machine. Unit Saul intercepted her. Sol was weeping, her eyes vacant, fighting on pure instinct to protect the mother. Lear did not fight Sol. She took the hit, a brutal kick to the ribs that cracked bone. She used the momentum to spin past her sister. She reached the turbine. It was shielded by a force field. Jax! Lear screamed. Timing! Jax understood. He did not try to control the fight. He supported the play. He aimed his scavenger pistol not at the wardens, but at the coolant pipe running above the turbine. He fired. The pipe burst. Liquid nitrogen sprayed down onto the force field generator. The shield flickered, shorting out for a fraction of a second. That was all Lear needed. She thrust her hands into the turbine blades. The metal shrieked. Lear screamed as the blades tore at her armored gloves, at her flesh. But she held on. She pushed. She poured every ounce of her engineered strength into breaking the machine that was trying to erase her soul. With a deafening crunch, the turbine shaft snapped. The machine exploded. The pink gas stopped venting. The strobe light died. Lear was thrown backward, landing hard on the cold floor. Silence returned to the core. Senator Vanya stood frozen. She looked at the broken machine. She looked at Lear, who was lying in a pool of coolant and blood. She looked at the blast doors, where the sound of thousands of angry footsteps was getting louder. "Impossible," Vanya whispered. "The conditioning is absolute." Jax walked over to Lear. He knelt down. "Lear?" She did not move. Jax felt a cold hand clutch his heart. "Lear, please." She coughed. She opened her eyes, and they were hazy, unfocused. She looked at the senator. Then she looked at Jax. She smelled the air. The pink gas was dissipating. Anxious meat. She rasped. Jax laughed, a sound that was half sob. Yeah, it is me." Lear sat up, wincing. She looked at her hands. They were mangled, healing slowly. Sol and the other wardens were stirring, looking around with confusion. The memory wipe had been interrupted, leaving them dazed but free. Vanya backed away. "I can fix this," she muttered. "I can renegotiate." She turned to run toward her private shuttle bay access. She didn't make it 3 steps. Sol stood up. She blocked the senator's path. Sol looked at Vanya with eyes that were no longer violet with devotion, but dark with betrayal. "Mother," Sol said, the word dripping with venom. Vanya halted. "Stay back. I command you." Sol tilted her head. "Command not recognized." The other wardens stood up. They formed a circle around the senator. They did not attack. They simply stood there, a wall of silent, terrifying judgment. The blast doors opened further. The civilians poured in. Civic security officers rushed past the crowd, not to arrest them but to secure the room. "Senator Vanya," a captain said, stepping through the wardens. "You are under arrest for crimes against the colony." Vanya looked at the wardens, then at the people, then finally at Lear. "I gave you purpose," Vanya screamed as they cuffed her. "I gave you a destiny." Lear stood up, leaning on Jax. She watched the senator being dragged away. "You gave me a hunger," Lear said softly. "I found the purpose myself." The chaos settled slowly. The station council convened an emergency session right there in the core, broadcast to everyone. They voted to unseal the warehouses. Jax and Lear sat on the floor near the ruined turbine, watching the world change. Lear was shivering. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her empty. "Jax," she whispered. "Yeah?" The voice in my head. "The one that says mine." "It is quiet." "That is good, right?" Jax asked. She looked at him, fear creeping back into her expression. "I do not know. Without the drive, without the imperative, I feel hollow. What if I do not know how to stay?" Jax took her hand. He didn't pull her close. He just held it, letting her feel the weight of his grip. "You do not have to know," he said. "You just have to choose. Every day, you wake up, and you decide." Lear looked at their joined hands. She looked at the bedroll Jax had carried on his back through the desert, now lying scorched on the floor nearby. She reached out and pulled the bedroll toward them. She looked at Jax, her eyes clear, silver, and utterly her own. "I claimed your bedroll," she said, her voice trembling with a new kind of emotion, not engineered but earned. She paused, a small, tired smile touching her lips. But I am asking for a place beside you. Jax smiled. He squeezed her hand. Application accepted. Partner. Epilogue. 6 months later. The dawn over Kestrel Station was artificial, but it was beautiful. The heavy blast shields of the dome were retracted, letting in the true light of the distant sun and the swirling colors of the nebula. The rooftop of the spire was quiet. The wind here was gentle, filtered by the atmospheric scrubbers. Jax Vane sat on a crate, adjusting the settings on a datapad. "How is the reading?" he asked. Lear was standing at the edge of the roof, balancing on the railing with a grace that still made Jax's stomach flip. She was wearing civilian clothes, a simple jacket and trousers, but she still wore the scarf from the desert around her neck. "Calorie distribution is at 100%, she reported, reading the holographic overlay in her vision. "The algae tanks are yielding a surplus, and—" She sniffed the air. "Someone in Sector 4 is cooking garlic." "Garlic," Jax mused. "Fancy." Lear jumped down from the railing. She moved differently now. The tension was gone. She didn't prowl. She walked. She came over to where Jax had laid out a double-width thermal mat. It was plush, new, and definitely not scavenged from a dumpster. She sat down, crossing her legs. "Kip says the therapy group is going well," she said. Saul laughed today. It was terrifying, but she laughed. "That is progress," Jax said. He handed her a container. "Breakfast." Lear opened it. It wasn't nutrient paste. It was a real apple, imported on the first trade ship from the inner worlds. She held it, looking at the red skin. "Scarcity makes us cruel," she murmured, repeating the lesson she had learned in the dark. "But shared power makes us free." Jax finished. She took a bite. It was loud and crisp. She chewed thoughtfully. "It is sweet," she decided. "I prefer batteries." "You do not prefer batteries," Jax laughed. "You just like scaring the tourists." Lear smirked. She leaned back on the bedroll, pulling Jax down with her. They lay side by side, looking up at the artificial moon. It was just a light now. No subliminal codes, no hidden agendas, just a big, dumb light bulb in the sky. "It belongs to no one," Lear said, watching it glow. "No," Jax agreed. "It is just there." Lear rolled onto her side, draping an arm over Jax's chest, her tail, which she no longer hid, curled lazily around his leg. "Mine," she whispered. Jax looked at her. "Yours?" he asked. "Chosen," she corrected. She closed her eyes, resting her head on his shoulder. Jax brushed a stray silver hair from her face. The station hummed below them, alive, messy, and loud. But up here, there was only the wind, the light, and the quiet, steady rhythm of two hearts beating in a rhythm they had decided on together. "Mine too," Jax whispered. And for the first time in 100 years, the moon over Kestrel Station looked like it was smiling.